virtually connected after such a long time, and we bring forth you the first lecture of Atelier 2021. Atelier is a series of lectures, workshops, exhibitions, walks, and more, which was started by the Department of Architecture in 2019. It is a platform of sharing knowledge, transmitting ideas amongst people from different spheres of architecture. It provides an environment and space to learn into different aspects through various thought processes. Atelier connects the students with professionals of this field and paves a way for open discussions and learning. So to begin with, we have with us our head of department, Bhavna ma'am, to share a few words.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. On behalf of
Good
Department
afternoon.
of Architecture, I welcome you all in Atelier 2021. I thank all the experts who are going to contribute in this Atelier lecture series. And I thank Professor Percy Pithawala for agreeing to speak to our students this afternoon. I'm sure we will have a mutually enriching session and an experience to remember, which will contribute the knowledge of every one of us. It is said by wise people that there is a lesson in every setback, and struggle makes you stronger. I thank my students and colleagues who made this event possible in spite of many constraints this year. I hope all of you agree with me. We, Department of Architecture, here believe in building broad foundation and enable students towards creating sensible and responsible built environment. With the same purpose, we train ourselves to learn to bring positive change in our chaotic and complex built environment. I hope this lecture proves to be a step forward. I welcome our today's speaker, Professor Pithawala, and I hope every one of us learn and bring a small change in near future. Without wasting our much time, I hand it over to the students and we can begin the series. Thank you, Professor Pithawala.
Thank you, Pavna. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Before we begin, I would like to give a brief introduction about Professor Percy Adil Pithawala. Sir is an architect, academic, and an artist with over 25 years of experience. He graduated from M.S.University, Baroda, and subsequently pursued Masters in Urban Design from Pratt Institute, New York. Prof worked as principal at Institute of Environmental Design, Vallabh Vidyanagar, for over 10 years. He has also been founding team member of School of Environmental Design and Architecture, Notre University.
He has a keen interest in art and has held several exhibitions at galleries in India and abroad. He participates regularly in international design ideas competitions. His entry for Guggenheim Reimagined was recently awarded the first prize. He has founded the Red Studio at Vadodara to further the discourse between art, architecture, and design. We extend a warm and hearty welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Without further ado, I would like to hand over to Percy Pithawala. The screen is yours.
Thank you. मारू पे स्क्रीन पर देखा चलो साइड पर मारून नाना picture देखा था ये लोगों ने? Okay. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Am I audible? Hmm. I hope I'm audible. Everybody must be on mute.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Aruvi and the team members of your student body for having invited me. MSU is my alma mater, and I'm always glad to contribute in whichever way I can. It has been years and years now, and I graduated in '89, and since then, in some way or the other, have remained connected with the department. Uh, in the last semester, of course, I got an opportunity to be a part of the urban design studio, and we look forward to similar participation as and when it is convenient and possible. So it's a pleasure to be here today and to be able to deliver this lecture. Parts of this lecture have been delivered earlier, but you may find some slides which are common between the first presentation that I did at your college almost about a year back or maybe even more. And uh, as as I was introduced, I have been in academics for almost about 25 to 27 years, and I have been both in administrative posts as well as academics. But I enjoy more so of academics, and with that, I was at School of Vidyanagar, school at Vallabh Vidyanagar for quite a long period of time, and subsequently, it was a different experience when we started a new school at Notre University about almost 8 years back. I've taken a break from Navratna at the moment, and I have set up my own studio, which is called the Red Studio, and we undertake a lot of academic endeavors and research together with participating in teaching at different institutions, as well as developing faculty development programs and offering workshops of varied natures based on history theories as well as art and architecture and deconstruction and postmodernism, histories, theories. And so the idea is that to kind of help out and fill the void which is there in a lot of institutions by going about and lecturing and trying to further the discourse of architecture in whichever way possible. So through the help of publications and research. And so the practice that I have through the Red Studio is a very small practice in terms of built practice as such. But the academic outreach is much more at the studio, and we're focusing more on that. And with that in mind, we are trying to take our workshops to different institutions, and we also conduct workshops at the Red Studio and also be a guide for thesis students and at masters and level. And so that is about to complete my introduction, which in some way. Another interest I have is I have an interest towards towards multidisciplinary approaches in approaching architecture and architecture making as well as problem solving. So in my case, I look at art as a point of departure in order to envision the architecture I make. So it has been this constant search for meaning and relationships between the field of art and architecture, which has broadly determined the course of my professional practice as well as academics and my area of interest and research. which started off when I was actually doing my master's at Pratt Institute in New York, and because of my interest in art, I visited all the world-class museums. Most of the knowledge that I have gained is all self-taught, and more so because Pratt Institute being predominantly an art school, we learned through interdisciplinary approach, and that has helped me further my objectives, as well as working in the office of Zahadid, and has helped me a lot in establishing that relationship between art and architecture, because she also draws her inspiration from the world of art, which is Russian constructivist art, and she transforms it into her architecture making process. So also, this title of this talk is about visions of the future, because we are basically very involved in ideation and forming ideas for the future about new ways of habitats, new habitats in the future, new ways of conceiving buildings, new technologies which will be there in the future, and imagining a new built environment, as Bhavna ma'am mentioned. So we are in the process of exploring that, and we find that participating in ideas design competitions is the best way of furthering our objectives and furthering our critical practice. And so over the period of last almost 2.5 years, we have been participating in ideas level competitions, and we have won a couple of them, as well as we've got honorary mentions for a couple of them. So this was a part of one of a large exhibition which had happened in Baroda, which took place in Baroda at the Space Gallery way back in last January, wherein all this competition models together with the projects together with the models and the drawings, right from concept to the final drawings, had been kept, because firmly believe that it's important that the process of designing should be made extremely clear rather than only the final product. Currently, the same exhibition was on till the end of December at S.A.S. also, wherein it was a virtual exhibition because of the current times. And I also teach studios at S.A.S. So we are conducting a studio at present, which is a L3 level studio for 4th and 5th year students, which is based on thought processes of deconstruction and postmodern. And we also taught a studio last semester. So I've been teaching there since the last couple of semesters. And as a visiting, of course, because I have my own other agendas to pursue in terms of, as we said, other endeavors of the Red Studio. So without taking much time, we can start with our directly with our competitions, because that is the crux of this is this whole slideshow. So one of the earliest competition entries that we participated in was for Guggenheim, redesigning the Guggenheim. The Guggenheim is a museum which is a world-class museum designed by the world-famous architect by the name of Frank Lloyd Wright, and it's based in New York. And the idea was to redesign the Guggenheim for today's time, as if Frank Lloyd Wright were to be alive today, how would he conceive the museum? So that was the first competition. It was the summer vacation, and we got together with a whole lot of students, and we participated in this competition together with students, and we were awarded the first prize. Because the number of students were more, we sent 2 entries, out of which one of them was awarded the first prize and the other one was awarded the honorable mention. I'm going to share both these entries with you all. And so this is where the present Guggenheim is. As you see, it's on the edge of the Central Park, and that's the building. In its time, when it was built way back in '65, it was quite a revolutionary idea in terms of museum design, wherein the people would travel up the ramp and go up and then start descending the ramp. And while descending the ramp, the artworks would be exhibited on the walls, and that was one way of perceiving art. The central space is a rotunda which has a skylight which brings the light in, and in its time, it was a very revolutionary concept. Since we were given the same site where the master architect had done the work, for us it was a challenge to imagine what kind of a concept would come together on the site. So we started doodling, and we started thinking about, and we started analyzing the site, and we started thinking about the city where it was located, which is New York City. In this case, that's the main island, which is Manhattan, and where my cursor is, that is the area where the Guggenheim is currently standing, and that's our site. So this is our site as we blow it up. That's the Central Park. That's the Guggenheim at the edge of the park. That's the Guggenheim building which is existing, and that is our site, and that is our proposal. The context is Manhattan, New York City, where all buildings are almost not less than 60 stories high because of the real estate value of the land. And in such a context, in order to come up with a structure, it was very challenging because we had to decide whether we wanted to go up that high as a museum. So in our scheme, we decided to propose a structure which was subterranean, which was going under the ground, and it was going almost 300 meters deep into the ground. And on the top, we wanted a plaza because of the density of the buildings around. That plaza would serve as a big respite for the city. And that is what our concept was based on. This is where it stands. That's the edge of Central Park. That's a large reservoir over there. And that is overlooking, the building is overlooking there. That would be our site. So the site is quite challenging. That's the immense expanse of the Central Park. You can imagine the density of the buildings around. In such a density, there is a lack of public space which is required for the people to engage in social activities. And we felt that by going subterranean in our concept, we would be opening up a public plaza at the ground level. So that is what our concept would be based on. These are other views of the Guggenheim. You must have studied it in your modern history classes. This is the central rotunda of the Guggenheim Museum. That is how the light filters in. These are the ramps. This is where the people would be traveling up and down the ramps, as well as seeing the artworks which would be exhibited. That's the central skylight. This is the ramp which is coming down. That is how the different program areas are organized. And so we wanted to study the building which is existing thoroughly in order to come up with a concept. And here, the main thing that appealed to us was this issue of the ramp, the issue of circulation, which was of prime importance. And we felt that if in some way we could repeat that issue of circulation and not get necessarily carried away by the building profile and the building form, that would be a very subtle way of responding to the genius of Frank Lloyd Wright in a way. So here comes our proposal. We wanted a building which would be going deep down into the surface of the earth. So we tried and looked at several situations and several contexts in which there was an attempt to go down into the earth. And these are the diamond mines in Iceland, which kind of inspired our conceptual process. These are the sectional and connections. These are our very own Ajanta caves. We wanted to build subterranean structures, so that is the gorge, and these are all the caves which are scattered around the gorge. And we also have, that's the context, and that is where we are trying to get onto. This would be the passageway. This is going to lead into, so our building is going to be a set of subterranean structures which are going to behave like caves and which are going to house the temporary exhibit. The permanent exhibit would be on the top. And we start with the sketching. And that's the context of Manhattan. That's the Central Park and the reservoir. This is the site. And we are imagining what kind of building we want. So we start drawing the section and we start imagining that the building is going to go deep down into the surface of the ground. On the top would be just a dome that you see when you are in the city. And that dome is inviting, and that dome becomes a big public plaza as such. That is the central theme of the concept. We start with the ramp. of the Guggenheim. We start compressing that ramp of the Guggenheim. We further take that ramp of the Guggenheim down below into the surface of the Earth. We further start taking it down, further down, and then further down, like a spring. So that is going to be the genesis of our building, which is going to come together at the site in some way. All right. So these are the different sketches for it. That is how we will be digging the trench into the ground, accommodating the lift and the elevator bang in the center, then trying to weave together two components of the site together on this side and that side, then trying to come up with a set of subterranean chambers which would be linked with the lift and the circulation. So something to do with circulation, services, everything got integrated into the concept at that stage. Digging the trench, having the elevator, weaving the two sides together with the bridges, carving out subterranean temporary galleries, and then covering, this is the ground level line, and then covering the entire surface with the help of the dome. You may feel that these projects are a little far-fetched, but we will have a discussion at the end of the slideshow if people have certain questions. Because our way is to question things, is to question whatever the laid down norms are, not for the sake of it, but in order to imagine new kind of habitats which would happen in the future. And that is, again, the charm of ideas competitions, that they give you the freedom and flexibility in order to come up with a unique concept. That is what probably was adjudged the best out of all the entries which were submitted, and we were awarded the first prize for it. So you would question, how can one go so deep into the ground and all that? But then everything is resolvable with the help of technologies that we have. And someday we will be imagining cities which are going to be subterranean and under the ground, more so because of the current climate crisis and everything that we are into at the moment. So these are different level plans. The other challenge of these competitions is you have to represent your whole idea in the form of an A2 sheet. And A2 sheet is where we have to represent the ideas. So everything that we are thinking about has to be compressed into that. These are the diagrams, first digging into the ground, then forming the circulation, then vertical circulation of the lift shafts, then arranging the program functions, and then arranging the permanent galleries on the top and the temporary galleries at the bottom, then encasing everything with the help of a dome on the top. That's an overall detailed cross section where we have a dome on the top, which is cut over here. That's the deep trench that we have. So as you see simultaneously the plan, because it is in a descending order and it goes into a cone, the program areas start getting smaller and smaller. We feel we wanted to play with the contrast, that is, we wanted to leave the trench as if it is dug out from the rock. So we wanted that texture of the rock over here, and that would contrast with the building. And that is purposely we wanted, because as people descended through the elevators, they should be able to see all that as an experience. So more so, the museums and galleries have undergone a sea change of development in the last 25 years. There have been some very unique museums built all around the world, because no more are the museums dull and drab. They are more for the, I mean, you may go there to see art if you're interested, but otherwise also you would like to be there. That's the kind of spaces which are envisioned. So these are the 3Ds that we developed. I have blow-ups of those 3Ds also, so you can have a look at it. This is how the trench is dug. This is how the different programs and circulation is coming through. This is where the layer of bridges gets added in order to connect the different functions. These are the different functions. And on the top is the dome, which kind of covers it all. And that's the plaza where people will be gathering. So that's our last slide for that. These are the cross sections. These are the smaller galleries. The verticals are the lift shafts. That is the whole trench. The permanent galleries, because we are having greater area on the top, this is where the permanent galleries would be. Otherwise, it would be a plaza covered with a dome. Right? So that is what the building would look like right from the top. You see that there are a set of dense high-rise buildings all around. And in that context, we felt that we do not want to make another high-rise building. And that is why we went for the concept of just making a plaza with a dome, which would shine in the night and it would invite people to be there, and it would act as a great respite for the city of New York, which lacks open spaces as such because of the density of the buildings around. This is the trench over here. This is the entranceway. This is how you get down. This is the texture of the trench. If you are looking down towards the trench, then this is what you see. These are the bridges which connect the two sides of the trench. This is how you would always be looking down deep into the pit, that we call it, and that would be a sheer experience. And then by carving out the pit further, we would end up with these gallery spaces which would be subterranean in a way. So that is the trench. Again, that is how the light filters in. This is a model we made of the Guggenheim. And as you can imagine, because the building is subterranean, we had to find new ways of making models. The entire model is made out of acrylic sheets, and it is made as if they are CAT scan level sections of all of that, and all of that coming together. You can see, if you are looking from the top deep into the pit or the trench, this is what you will see, the bridges connecting. The reds are indicative of the railings that we have, and that's the view you will get as you go down. All right. The verticals are the lift shafts, the white is the circulation, and the rest of it would be the program areas for the temporary galleries, and that would be the scale of the people on. As we said, there were more students, so because there was a limit of about not more than 3 students for one entry, we decided to submit 2 entries, though we all worked together on it. I mean, we made 2 entries with 2 different teams, and we participated in and sent in 1 more entry. So incidentally, we got an honorable mention for that entry too. And in this entry, we wanted to explore the idea of a skyscraper, but a skyscraper of a different kind, a skyscraper which is very organic in nature, a skyscraper which is green in nature, a skyscraper which almost looks like a vertical green garden. And that is what we started with, because in the first scheme, we went deep into the ground. In the second scheme, we wanted to go high up, but we wanted to make it a green skyscraper, and that is what our idea was. That is why we call it the tall museum typology. These are the different inspirations for us, which is in the form of balloons, because we want some kind of pneumatic structure. This is a sketch for that. This is the high-rise tower. These are the different floors. I will take you through it. This is a plaza. The building has been lifted up in order to create the plaza space over here also, as in the last scheme. These are the different pneumatic structures in the form of the bubbles. The bubbles would contain this different galleries, art galleries, and all the bubbles would be interspersed with each other and connected through escalators. That is what the overall scheme would be like. These are a set of bubbles. That's a green space in between the bubbles. As and when you're traveling from one bubble onto another bubble, you will be traveling to the green space. And when you are at that particular level, you will see the whole expanse of the Central Park, which is the green. And that is what more or less our concept was based on. You know, these are concept sketches. So whenever you're doing your pieces or whatever you may be in your other studio projects also, it's important to keep that whole trail of your original sketches right from the beginning when you start conceptualizing what your project is going to be like, because that process is very important and you need to follow a consistent thought process whenever you are designing in your studios and otherwise. So that becomes very important for us. We call it the tall museum typology. This is the panel that we submitted. As you can see, these are the bubbles. This is the skyscraper. This is the green skyscraper. There are bubbles trapped within the scaffolding of the structure. The greenery will grow all around it, and then eventually the whole building will become green on the edge of the Central Park. So you see the plaza over here. Gradually, the services, all the services are located in the back, because at the back we have a high-rise building. We felt that's the best way to put services, because this area overlooks the Central Park, and that area we wanted it free. So that was the reason for that. And then eventually the floors start coming up. The floors start getting connected with the escalators. The bubbles start getting formed. The bubbles start getting encased within a scaffolding. And that is what the 3D view would be like, where the green creepers and everything will take over the entire structural scaffold and will become a green space eventually. That's the view from the plaza level. That's the view from the plaza level again, and the scaffolding. That is how the skyscraper would rise. That is how the bubbles would get formed and the bubbles would get interspersed. Another salient feature of this scheme was that it would be flexible in nature, that in the future, if you want some more gallery space, then you just keep on adding more and more bubbles. And there is an element of incremental growth in the scheme which is embedded within it. That's the view of the bubble, and that's the scaffolding that you see around, and eventually the green would take over. So that is this is the publication in the magazine of the same which had come to. The next competition that we did was for the Taj Amity Pavilion. You all are aware that there was an incident which happened of terrorism, an act of terrorism at the Taj Mahal Hotel, and which is close to the Gateway of India. And at the Gateway of India, there is a huge plaza in front of it. And there was a proposal to come up with a peace pavilion, or a Taj Amity Pavilion that we call it. And it was supposed to be a temporary structure to be erected. And there was a competition entry called for it, and we participated in it. And this, just to give you an idea about the context, the entire plaza. The other challenge was that this structure had to be a dismantleable structure, which you can dismantle after a certain period of time and maybe again reassemble it again. So it had to be thought of as some sort of a system where we could easily assemble and disassemble it. These are the process sketches for it that we're coming up with. And so we kept on looking for inspiration. Every time, whenever you get a project, the context is most important. There may be structures within your context, but every time you have to take those structures as an opportunity rather than a constraint, and you have to take clues from it in order to design. And in this case, we felt the arches of the Gateway of India were a source of inspiration because that was the closest context. We started working and manipulating with the arches, half arch, broken arch, scaled arch, different ways of looking at arches, and then all the arches coming together in order to form an enclosure. So that's the sketch. That's our very first sketch that we did for the scheme with the Gateway of India, and that is the backdrop of it. This is the model that we came up with for that, and that is the whole sheet that we have. That is the foreground, that is our proposal. So taking inspiration of the arches from the Gateway of India, we had to make them smaller in scale because that scale is very huge. And then gradually playing around with the arches in a way, because an act of terror has happened, some kind of chaos has occurred. And we wanted to depict that chaos on site with the help of the metaphor of the arch, an arch which is broken, in order to show that something has broken, something chaotic has happened, an act of terror has happened, and there is a lot of confusion. And then eventually, as an act of communal harmony, every arch is coming together and getting roofed over in order to create a sense of people coming together with communal harmony. So that is why we call it an ode to hope. These are the process sketches, these are the process diagrams rather, and that is how it gets. These are the different views that you're getting through it. This is the Gateway of India. These are the arches. That's the plaza. That's the statue over there, which is existing. That's the road. This is where the Taj Mahal Hotel is located, and this is the context that we have. So, and eventually, it was all displayed in a museum. Not a museum, a gallery space, which was called the Space Gallery way back in last January, together with the process diagrams model and our competition entry sheet. And that is what the next competition is about. We call it Curiosity Constructs. It's actually a place for young kids, and it is a place where children can come and they can upgrade their level of curiosity. They can get involved with the build structures that are going to be inside the building, and through the act of playing and getting involved, it will lead to some kind of a psychological growth amongst the kids, and that is what the emphasis was. So this is the town of La Bella Monello in Italy, and that is where the pointer is, that is where our site is. This is the site which is located over here. That's an abandoned potteries factory which is over here, and that's the shed of the abandoned factory. This is the interiors of the abandoned factory. These are photographs of the abandoned factory. And the reason why we call it Curiosity Constructs is we want to develop some kind of forms. We want to develop children's psychology by playing, by virtue of playing and getting involved. So there was an existing building. We decided not to demolish the existing building, but we decided to keep a whole lot of red structures are the new structures within it, which we call it somewhat like follies or pavilions within an existing structure. And they are all in turn connected with each other. And that is where the children get involved in the act of playing and learning. So this was a slightly more detailed competition where we had to come up with more detailed program and more detailed brief it was, which we had to address. And these are the small pavilions that you see, which are going to get interspersed within the existing structures. The structure of the new is going to be independent of the existing in any case, and that is how it is coming up. These are the details of each of those pavilions. They're very childlike. They involve the children in the act of playing, and while playing, the children's psychology develops. That was the objective behind them. These are the different floor plans and different other views. That is how the buildings come together on the site. And this is eventually going to be the way the building would become. And these are the different views through it. The red structures are all the new structures, add-ons to the existing in a way. There's a swimming pool area inside the building. All these are the existing factory sheds which have been kept the way they are. And they have been made so that there is always a contrast between the old and the new, and we wanted it to be felt. These are the different small pavilions which are going to be there for the children to play in. We call them the follies, and different ways which are scattered. And this is how it was exhibited along with the models at the studio space, the gallery space. And these are the different panels. That's the main panel. This is a concept sketch. And then the details of different areas are also mentioned over here. Another important competition that we took part on it and we won an honorable mention for it was a very prestigious competition for redesigning the spire which had been burned down of the Notre Dame Cathedral. You're all aware about the Notre Dame Cathedral, which is almost a centuries old cathedral, which is almost 1,000 years old. And you must have read about it in your history books and seen the sections and all that. There is a tall spire. Incidentally, the spire got burned down about almost a year and a half back in a fire. And there was a competition floated that what would the new spire be like. Incidentally, this building is very important to the residents of Paris because they have been associated and it's a part of their heritage and value and culture. And the whole idea was that how can we reimagine the tower? And we started reimagining the tower, but we didn't want to build it the way it was. We thought that it was an opportunity in order to build a new kind of a tower to substitute the old in a new technology for the newer times and for establishing a new icon for the city of Paris. And that is what we tried to do. So that is the church, that is the spire, that is the one sheet that we were asked to submit. This is how, these are the key diagrams for how it grew. This is a cross section for that area, which is essentially now a glass cone, which is of the exact same height in order to replace the one which was existing before. Then we try to add on the scaffolding beyond it, and the scaffolding is gradually getting broken. The scaffolding gives you a feeling of a silhouette. It gives you the essence of a spire. So we call it the presence of the absence, something which is not there and which makes its absence felt. And our project was more about resurrecting the old spire in a new way. And so as you can see, there's a whole lot of green which will grow on the spire, and the entire spire over a period of time will become green. Another thing is we are opening it up to the people so that people can actually climb up and down on the spire, maybe as that's the kind of a space which will be here on the roof, which would overlook inside the cathedral space. We have some more diagrams. That is how, so the competition brief asked for the redesigning of the spire as well as redesigning the areas which were got burned down on the rooftop also. So it was a part of the same scheme. This is how, this is scaffolding, and eventually the scaffolding gets cut And that is our new tower that we are proposing over there. And that is finally, there will be some planters and there will be greenery growing all over it, so that eventually it would look like a green spire on the skyline of Paris. And that is what it was imagined as. That is the render for it. That is a close-up view of the render with the roofs. That is the area where the two roofs are intersecting, and that is a hole, that is a void which is there, and through that void you can look into the cathedral down below. That is what the idea was. And this is the sketches. This is showing the existing condition where the spire is no more and the roof is burned down, and this is showing our new proposal which is on the side. Right? This was published. We made a conceptual model for that. This was also exhibited at the exhibition which I'm talking about last Jan. Then we have another competition which is called the Central Park Library. It is library, but library imagined in a new kind of a way, which we are thinking of. And for this library, the Central Park, you also, when you saw the Guggenheim, which is on the edge of the Central Park, which is a big park in New York, here the context of the library is very different. It is meant to be like an object within the park, and that is how we start sketching about it. We start imagining it as a huge conservatory, because in that kind of a cold climate, it is important that people can sit inside the building and are able to view the greenery of the Central Park. In a way, that concept is inspired by the concept of an open book. It's a painting by Paul Klee, because we imagine the library as a book, and even the building form is resembling it to some extent. And then everything comes together. These are the set of diagrams that we have indicating that. This is how the space frame, which is the outer covering and everything, comes together. We imagine the space as a kind of a conservatory for the plants and everything, which is kind of a greenhouse, in a way. And the steps that you see are crisscrossing each other. It is taken from very much our concept of the Kund, which we have, our concept of the Kund, that the steps are going up and down, steps are intertwined with each other, and that becomes a big public space. You may or you may not be interested in taking a book and reading there, but you would definitely like to be in a space like that, because all of that is overlooking the park, in fact. So that is how we remain contextual to the project, and that is how different projects that you see all over in different competitions, the brief has been evolved and the brief has been developed on taking the context in mind, and the concept has somehow emerged from the context itself. That's the internal organization, and that is what you'll be seeing, the people going up and down, crisscrossing. So in all of these competitions, you'll imagine, we have tried to imagine new ways of conceiving a building. In this case, the library building. In this case, again, there were two sets of students, so we decided to submit a second competition with another set of students. And in this scheme, we tried to explore a very different scheme than the first one, in which we decided that the library is like a bridge, and then the cubes are inserted within the bridge, as a kind of a form. So that's the context. This is the bridge, and gradually the cubes start getting inserted within the bridge. And the other advantage of this scheme is that it is incremental in nature, so that you can keep adding more and more bridges and the functions can keep expanding. Other advantage is that you are touching the ground barely with the help of this at 4 points, so that the ground is minimally disturbed, and the flow of the people on the ground can easily occur still, and plus the vegetation will also remain. So there are distinct advantages to this scheme, very different from the first one. These are the different set of cubes. What you see, the vertical cylinders are the lift shafts, and that is the view that you get. And at some point of time, there are staircases through which you can come down. This is the internal organization of the spaces. The central passage area is where we have tried to keep the book racks, and these are the areas where you can spill out and you can take a book and read, all within the context of the Central Park in a way. And that is how, for just demonstrative purposes, we have shown 3 cubes, but the scheme can grow. So we have models for that, and we have sheets for that, we have concept sketches for that. That's another competition we call Fashion Institute in Milan, Italy. That's another competition inspired by the sculptures. It's located on the edge of a lake, which is called Lake Como, near Milan and in Italy. And that's a site that we have. And we took inspiration from sculpture by famous artist and sculptor by the name of Antoine Gomble, and that is a sculpture. These are the sketches which developed over a period of time, and we imagined that what if this whole sculpture of the man becomes a huge sculpture, and we try to imagine that different floors and levels within it in some way, you know. So that was a thought, and that is how we have started putting in, and then we start putting in the building masses within it. That's the scale of the human being, and the human being can travel within that sculpture, you know. So that is how the scheme is. This is the Anton Gromley structure. That's the sculpture which has been scaled up in a way, and that these are the different masses which are there, and that's going to be the catwalk, which is going to be here, which is the stretched leg of the person, and the people will be going up and down this ramp walk over here, and that is what it has been imagined as. So that's a sculpture, that's that, because we felt fashion is to do with human beings more so, and as you can see, there are building masses, then there are other open areas, then there would be a school, so of course some of them will be classrooms, and then it would be all within a scaffold, and that is how it would become. And this is what the final sheet would look like with each time, as you would notice in each of our sheet, I'm telling you for academic purposes, is that it would be nice if you are able to explain your process as a sequence of layers, so that your teachers will be very much convinced about your concept. In our cases, most of the cases where we try to imagine building of new typologies, it became very necessary that we explain our thing very clearly, and because otherwise it can be taken off as a passing fancy, and this helps us to articulate our schemes to the jurors also in a way. Well, yeah. So these are some of the views of that, and that is the scheme with this cloth which is unwinding, which is almost like a fashion place, and these are the different volumes within it, and that's the surrounding of the place. And these are the different areas of the fashion school which we are looking at, and that's the lake side, which is Lake Como. That is the catwalk, which is below. And these are the different structures and different views. There's another scheme called the Museum of Design. It's in Oslo, Norway, and it is located next to the water body. And that's the site that we have. It is all this design products, design furniture, designed objects, designed hardware, everything which is designer is kept in this museum according to a certain timeline, in order to explain that how design is important for us in day-to-day living. So this is what the water channel was. We decided to take the water channel into the site so as to allow the people to come by boats and park their boats here and then come into the site. So we extended the channel here. We extended the lines of the piers into our buildings. These lines of the piers would gradually become concrete blade walls, which would become part of our structures. And then eventually this concrete blade walls, this is a top plan view. So in the top plan view, these are the kind of tubes which will be inserted into the concrete blade walls. And there would be a way, if you keep drawing sections, there would be a way of going from one tube to another, to another, to another in some ways also, right? So that is what the idea was. All right. Now this is what the axonometric is like, the different exploded axonometrics, and this is what the final view of the building is. That these are the blade walls, and these are the volumes which are being interspersed within it, and you can travel from one volume into another volume above. The other advantage of this scheme is that you don't touch the ground. When you don't touch the ground, you already get a ready-made shaded area under the ground for people to walk through around it. So that's our one sheet which we had to submit, which is like any other sheet. This is the area around the amphitheater which is happening. That's the area below the building which I said that is kept free for people to walk around. There is an element of the bridge on the top which gives you the view of the green and the expanse on the top, which is in this case over here. So these are the different tubes that we saw, which are embedded within the blade walls. This is the area where the boats would come and you enter in through it, you know. So that this is one of our other competition that we did. It's called the Sacred Space. And this is, of course, the Ghats of Banaras and the Ahilaya Ghat. And in Banaras, the competition brief required that it doesn't have to be of a certain faith. It doesn't have to be a Hindu or any other faith. It can be a multi-faith kind of a place where people can just go meditate, be a part of it, and be there. Even the site was not given to us but Banaras being a very center for Hinduism and place where people go, and it is on the banks of the Ganges and all that, we felt that there is a very spiritual notion involved with it, and we wanted to erect temporary structure on the banks of the Ghats over there. So that is what we decided, the site being over there. And we started making certain drawings, and we started making drawings of the steps, and the steps going in that fashion. And then gradually we were just looking at different ways of doing the steps in a way. And then we started making different directions of the steps in the form of lines, and then try to see where they overlap, what they do. And that is how we've started getting the different lines of intersections. And that is how we are getting the different points of intersection. And from these points of intersections, our scheme starts emerging in some way, with the help of that. So the most prominent thing about the Ghat is the steps. And the steps, if you see the shadow falling on it, it's actually a line. So we are playing with lines, and we are playing with lines in different ways. And the lines will not remain two-dimensional like a Ghat. It will take on a three-dimensional form. That is what we were trying to do. So that is what our site is, and that is where. So it's more like a temporary sculpture or a temporary installation that you are seeing over here. We did this in a span of only about 2 days, so we ran out of time, but we could have done it better. This is our last competition, but this is how we were imagining this structure to be, and that is where some of the areas are covered, and that's the scale of the human being, and that is how. So all those lines that you are seeing now have taken up the line of the scaffold in some way. So that is what a part of that idea is, in a way. Some part will get covered, some part will remain open. It's almost like an exoskeleton, a very playful kind of an object, which is non-denominational in nature, which is, you feel the presence of the sacred in a sense, but without having to be too repetitive about, this kind of forms which are already existing on the cards. So in a different contemporary way of looking at it was what we wanted to do. And that's what we imagine. I won't dwell much into it, but this is a part of my studio, which is over here. As and when some students are interested, they can take my appointment and come and have a look. The studio that I have is, I've amalgamated 2 apartments and made it into one. So it's more like a place for working, and it's more of a place of making art, and it's more of a place for conducting workshops sometimes. And it's a place where you can stay and you can be a part of an inspirational space, and with art all around. That is what the idea was, with the library and everything. So sometimes it can double up as an art gallery. There are a series of sliding doors which can be closed and open, sliding folding doors which can be closed and open, in order to create various configuration of space. That is what we're trying to do. This is the interior views of the studio, and these are the different objects. That's the staircase which goes up to the room on the terrace, and these are the different artworks in the studio, and the way it was published in the magazine. That is what it is. One of the interviews which has been published in Think Matter. These are some of the theses which I've guided at Navratna. So just I'll take you through it very very quickly. And because my area of focus is art, I mean, this was a thesis which was to do with art and architecture, and these were essentially research theses culminating into smaller projects which happened around this time. And we are trying to analyze works of Eisenman, we are trying to analyze works of Peter Eisenman, and he's trying to get into his own design strategies, which is he designed pavilions in Scotland, and that is what the design was. This is a project at Mandu. This is about fiction and reality, weaving narratives and spaces. This is a research thesis that culminates into a small project at Mandu. This is more to do with the philosophical part of deconstruction, which is the specters of Derrida being the philosopher from whom deconstruction originated in a way as a literary text. So these are a few, because I've been teaching, these are a few academic projects of the students at the sixth semester level, sorry. And this is a project in an abandoned quarry, and that's a project which Sham had made. And everywhere project sketches are involved. These are the different workshops that we do at foundation level, which is the planes and solids workshop. This is being conducted at different schools. This is the one at APID in Vidyanagar. This is these are different exercises. All these exercises are very well researched so that we take the students in a very step-by-step manner and make them understand the significance of space making in architecture and how architecture is different than purely just making art. So there is a fine difference, and that needs to be understood. So that's why the very act of making models, and we introduce them to some of the architecture making elements like steps and everything, which is also a part of it. Steps and walls and planes, which is what the thing is. This was a nice project, which is again for the foundation level, wherein we give them that this is a wall, you can puncture the wall at different places and you let the elements go in and out of it. We give them the presence of a tree and we give them the presence of a mound. They can place it at different places that they like, and they create a composition which is visually and physically both balanced. It has to be both in a way. That's why, can you see this dotted lines? This dotted lines that you see are the lines of the cones of vision, as well as they help you structure the composition in a way. So these would be the models which we're making. These are the different rendered views of the models. And this is a model which is being constructed over there. And these are the models which are done and then exhibited in the space. Because whenever we conduct this workshop, these are 4 or 5 day sessions, and we make sure that project is complete in a way. So, but the lessons are very basic. The lessons are very meaningful. So if someone wants to take this at first year level, it's a different story, but you can almost take it to a level of a PhD level by doing your research on it, and developing design. Because after all, every building falls into some or the other experience of this kind. That's what you can. So we make sure that we, even at a first year level, we make them do proper drawings, sections, cuts. So we try to take it with the subject of TRD, so that also gets taught over here. This whole thing about making perspectives is also taught over here. This is the workshop that we do on art and architecture, whereby we take a work of art and then we are trying to get it extruded in the 3 dimension, and then we are trying to imagine masses and volumes within it. So that becomes a part of it. These are the drawings, these are the models, this is the way it is done. Won't take you much into it. But look at this. This is an example, all right? And this is a model by Zahadi. So Zaha works in a similar fashion, whereby she takes her inspiration from constructivist drawings, and she transforms it into, this is her peak competition, which is her first project in Hong Kong. We also undertake workshops in history theories, and that is also one of the workshops on introduction to deconstruction, which is also a different way of looking at things. I won't get much into it, but these are the different ways of looking at it. And this is a pavilion within Kamatibak. So you imagine there is a toy train over there. The toy train keeps getting expanded in terms of its scale as a skeleton. The toy train gets, because of the speed of it, it is getting crushed in its own way, and it leaves the shards. And then some of the areas get covered, which becomes a pavilion, in a way. So that's how you imagine. These are the views of the exhibition, which was held at Gallery Space, and that's an installation also, which was a part of it. So the idea was that whatever I'm representing in terms of drawings and student models and models, the idea was that we can take it into a built expression some way, halfway between a drawing and an actual building. So this installation is we have put human beings over here also. So it's meant to be at a certain scale, it's meant to be at a certain scale. So these are the different parts of the exhibition, and these are some student models from the workshops that we conduct, which are also interspersed together with it, and that has become a part of the space. This is the installation, and that's the end of it. Yeah. In order to see some process-based work, you can always follow us on this Insta account, where I put in a whole lot of thesis work and other things that we keep doing. So yeah, that's the end of it. I hope I was on time. If you have any questions, in any case, feel free to ask. We can take 2-3 questions. Ankit, no phone.
Thank you so much, sir, for encouraging us to go beyond boundaries and comfort zones to make something as inspirational as your ideas and concepts. So now we will be opening up the floor for questions. So you can kindly just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask forward.
Or they
Or
can
even
even
can
write
type it in the
it.
chat box.
They can write it in the chat box also if they want. That's fine.
Yes, sure, sir.
Can I just come in for a minute, Mansi?
Haji.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor
Thank you, ma'am.
Pithawala. It was absolutely delight to watch and to hear all your ideas. I wish we all can work together.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pamela.
Yes, so now we can proceed with the questions.
This is Amrita Vaya. Sir, my question is that how does one orient themselves to
Hello.
such how does
Can
one
you
orient? Yes.
can you repeat your question? Yeah, I was mute for a while. Yeah. Tell me.
My question is how does one orient themselves to such alien sites when it comes to competition? Because mostly we are used to having done the site visits personally when we are given new projects in every semester. So how do we proceed about responding to the context and hitting the brief right?
Because most of these competitions are international competitions, and whenever they are inviting everybody from all over the world to participate, uh, they make sure that whatever design brief that they are giving is a very well published brief. They make sure that they give you all the details. They make sure that they give you a walkthrough of the site. They make sure they give you all the necessary drawings of the site. So I think you can build up your entire thing by looking at those things. Of course, in my case, I was fortunate that I have seen almost 4 of the sites out of 4 to 5 sites out of these. So it was easier for me. I can understand your question, but in case of this international design competitions, the briefs are very strong. The briefs are made in such a way that when you register, they provide you with all the details. So you have to make do with that in a way and come up with your thing. Because like in the case of Notre Dame, it's very, very well documented. Like in the case of Central Park, it's very well documented. Like in the case of Banaras, it was well documented. Like in the case of Guggenheim, it was very well documented. We know the building of Frank Lloyd Wright. So it makes our job easier in a way, you know. So it's not alien completely. And then the Bombay side, which we were very much able to go and travel and see. So I agree, I understand your point of view, but we have to work with the brief, and the brief is pretty detailed, I would say, which has provides you with everything in a way. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, hi. Am I audible?
Yes.
Um, so the question I had was that the current built environment definitely needs a change. But having entered so many competitions, how do you see the values behind your work entering the current existing system, which is like changing constantly? But how do you see the values behind your work entering the current system? As in, you called your presentations visions of the future. How do you visualize the future as a designer? I mean, do you think that it is, uh, as a designer, you mentioned climate change earlier, that if the climate change would show a drastic physical change in the living environment, then you would be imagining cities underground. But does it
It's
really need to go there? Does, as
always
designers, can't we stop it? Or what is the role of designers into the change?
we are not that is because we can make sustainable buildings and we can prevent it, but the damage which has been done is so drastic that it is evident that climate change is going to hit. And we are already observing that more and more the climate and weather is getting erratic. The ocean levels are rising. The climate congress is trying to make sure that we do not reach that level where the damage is irreversible, but somehow it's going to happen. So of course the way to go is to be more sustainable in our approach of making buildings and conserving buildings and doing all that, which is coming up in a big way, and everybody is doing it. So everybody is doing their bit. But the idea is that maybe we have too far gone into, which which you would have seen that with that multi-story skyscraper that we made for the Guggenheim, which we envisaged as a skyscraper which has its own kind of biodiversity, because there will be different kind of plants and everything on top of it, and it would have its own ecosystem and a climate. Considering again the green issue, then we also took it up at the tower for the Notre Dame, which was essentially conceptualized as a green kind of a tower to replace the existing tower.
Yep.
So I'm not saying green. Green is one way of doing it, but sometimes, sometimes, and it is not me. People have already imagined cities which are under the ground. There was an architect by the name of Peter Cook who had already imagined, almost in the 60s and 50s, that how the future of living is going to be. The future of living is going to be very different, and the pandemic has shown us that. And I think there'll be a lot of discussions on that as to the way we live, the way we work, the way we interact, the way everything will change, and that is definitely going to affect our architecture making and role as architects. So I think all of that, the repercussions of that are going to be seen and analyzed and reviewed and we are all going to understand very shortly that things are not going to be the same. So in architecture community, there are some architects who build. There are some architects who discuss and critique. There are some architects who research. There are some architects who who write. There is a role for everyone in this. What I'm trying to show through these competitions is that uh, maybe you might think that this kind of buildings may not be buildable, but the same thing was said for buildings which were conceived almost 50 years back, and now they have very much become a reality. I'm not trying to say that
Yeah,
my ideas are going to
sure.
come true, but so there are some people needed to provide some kind of visions.
Yes.
There are some, so I see more of my role in that kind of a realm where I try to inspire students. I try to, because unlike a teacher who would say that this is not possible, that is not possible, that cannot be
Yeah,
done, this
I get
cannot
that.
be done. I mean, I can always say that everything is possible in today's technology and time. But the
Yeah.
thing is, we have to be able to resolve it properly and present it properly, even as a student, because if you want your idea to be different, then it has to be articulated well to the faculties so that they can
Yeah.
also comment on it. That's the idea. Okay?
Yeah. If you just a quick question, if you were to uh, base your work on a few values, what would you say they are?
What value? Value meaning, I would say that they are very contextually relevant, most of the projects, because, um, and I feel that there is a need to change with the times, and architecture has a major role to play because we have icons from the past, iconic buildings from the past. There is a need to build iconic buildings for the future. So I think architects play an important role, and innovation and creativity is the key to that. And I am trying to foster that in some way amongst the academic community, students, and as well as write and research about that. So that is what we say. And the value is that tomorrow, more than ever now, because architecture is always understood as something you build as a spatial environment, but architecture has not remained an isolated discipline. An architect can come together with someone from physics, and come up with something really interesting. So there is a lot of there's a lot of possibilities of cross pollination between different fields now. So architecture should be more connected with other fields rather than remaining isolated.
Yes.
And students also should remain more open to different influences. I mean, the idea is not to get classified or categorized into one kind of thinking, because the world has moved on and we have so many things now possible. So the idea is, as a student, is to keep oneself open, and it eventually pays more dividends, especially in the academics, because that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, can you repeat the name of the architect who envisioned, you said Peter,
Peter Cook.
what else?
Peter Cook. Cook. Cook.
Cook.
Cook.
Okay.
And there is a
Okay.
group by the name of Archigram. It belongs to a
Okay.
group. That is where you
Mm.
see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. छोकराओ तो છે ખાસ. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, according to you, what are the things one should consider while participating in any competition?
According to me. Uh, yeah, the idea is that, see, in competitions, in every competition, there are not less than at least 100 entries. I mean, in some of them, there were almost 800,000 entries. So the juror, when they look at your sheet which you submit, which is in that A1 format, you should have something of value in that sheet which the jurors would want to take a second look at. So either you should have something in terms of value addition which you are giving, so the jurors would want to know more about that. The idea is how to catch the eye of the juror, so that they want to know more about your project. I think that is the key. Otherwise, there may be many great projects in the competition which may be overlooked, a lot of times. So the idea is to hold attention, and the idea is to hold attention of the juror into wanting to know more. And I feel that that is the key behind most of these ideas competitions. And uh, I'm not saying by trying to be different for the sake of it, but having some value in your work, which has substance, rather than just some very beautiful form making or something like that. So that's how it is. So I think, and the idea is to go all the way when you are exploring competition, to not let anything stop you. You have to explore a bold idea and go all the way, because something halfway is not going to help. All right. As I always tell
Yes.
the students, you
Thank
have to
you.
go all the way and you have to explore. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. એવું બોલવાનું હતો, as I had told Ravi. એક વાર તારી પર ખીજવાઈ ગયો હતો.
Hello, sir.
હા હા બોલ. Yes.
So, like, this talk is about vision of the future, and you said that there is an architect who have already imagined underground city. So, my question is how to convince people regarding the same, like what you are imagining, how to convince people through your design. Designing is one part, and convincing your design to people is another. So, how would we face it?
Well, I think people would not be left with much of an option, because whenever this architects, there is an architect by the name of Paolo Solari, who has done this cities in the desert, and he has imagined this kind of cities which will happen after some kind of an apocalypse or an event happens, which destroys some portions of the earth, or there is a drastic change in climate. So, so that one of the major advantages is that I'm not much of a climate expert, but all I can say is that when you go deep down into the earth, automatically a lot of your problems get solved, because it is much cooler in that kind of an. So when our temperatures will increase, then the possibility of going down will under the earth will have its own advantages. So I think one will have to present with some kind of concrete results and facts and figures in order to convince the people, because people will of course not get convinced like that. So we have to work together with the climate scientists, we have to work together with biologists, we have to work with environmentalists, we have to work with everyone in order to convince the people that this is the best possible solution in this kind of a scenario. So you are right that an architect's role also becomes very important in terms of convincing, whoever the client may be. And that is a very important part of being an architect. So, but in this case, because this is a large scale project, you have to get a lot of other people involved and on the board in order to make a case that this is the best way to, live in the future, or the best way to do things. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
So my question is that Like, even though we are advancing into the age of technology, every day we see that we have this need to refer the past to solve a problem. So do you think that the architectural problems of today have solutions in vernacular route?
Yeah, yeah, of course, that is one way to go. And we have some of the best traditional knowledge of building systems. I think a lot of architects are working on reviving those systems, because they were the most logical and most effective systems of passive cooling, as they call it, and all that. So definitely it is there in our age-old systems. That knowledge was there, but that knowledge was obscured, and the people generally went haywire and started constructing structures which didn't make any sense. And that is how the damage has been caused to the environment in any way. So you are right. Sometimes it's going back to the past, which will solve our issues. I mean, yeah, because we saw examples of Ajanta caves. I mean, once you step into those caves, the environment is completely different, and you were entering into a different. So these people had knowledge. These people had knowledge of these
Yeah.
things. And they were making things and without harming the environment. So of course, without having to use too much of technology, also it is possible. So it's not that we have to use technology on a grand scale. Sometimes it's a lot of common sense, but that common sense is uncommon, as they say. We want to go for all that because we want to show our wealth, we want to show all that, and in that craziness, we just spoil everything. That's the thing.
Okay, sir. You.
Yes. Are we done? One more question, and then it's done.
Hello.
Haji, one more question, huh?
Yes.
Because I
We
need to be
yes,
somewhere.
we'll be wrapping up after this.
Please, thank you.
You
Yes,
often
Deb.
have so many iterations when you're entering into a design competition because it is mostly exploration. And the way forward is often rejecting certain examples or iterations that you have. But when you don't have when you're not practicing, so in design class it often happens that certain ideas get rejected because they do not function practically. And in your work there is a lot, there's no fine line to function practically and not practically. So how do you go past these, or how do you select an idea, or what factors push the ideas and thoughts or streamline them into one project?
Well, everything is possible. Um, I don't. Sometimes the students tend to just copy something from a book or some image that they have seen and want to do that. I'm talking from the student point of view and an academic point of view. And because I have been a teacher, so I'm imagining what your teachers would have to say if you come up with some very outlandish kind of design. Of course, say that it doesn't work. But then the responsibility is on the part of the student to work harder and to be able to resolve everything. That is what I meant. And to be able to convince the teacher that your scheme works very well in terms of everything, in terms of structure, in terms of services, in terms of articulation, in terms of satisfying the program, in terms of the climate context, in terms of the natural context, every which way. When your building starts working in all these layers, then uh, then uh, then then I think you can convince your teachers. The teachers may reject an idea because you may not have provided sufficient amount of drawings or sufficient amount of data which was needed to sustain it. So that's what I advise my students, that when they want to come up with something different, then they have to be willing to work very hard, and they have to be willing to convince the teacher, as someone mentioned about convincing the client, and you have to make an argument that your idea works, So I think that would be the key. In a lot of our projects, you would have seen that we have not gone to the level of resolution. I'm being very honest. They are, but I can very well tell you that they can all be resolved. It's just a matter of going through some time and taking advantage of the technology, discussing in detail with the structure consultant, and all of that can happen because it is not something out of the blue. All of these projects are not something extraordinary. I mean, all of these projects can be built. That's what I'm trying to say to answer your question. It's just a matter of believing in it and trying to solve it together with the consultants in order to arrive at a situation where we can build it. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Yes, that
So
makes sense.
the idea is not to be afraid. The idea is to explore. Academics is a very good ground to explore, and you will not get such an opportunity afterwards. And but the only thing is, you will have to be prepared to work very hard for it, and you have to learn to push the limits. You have to learn to push the boundaries. You have to learn how to push yourself into doing things. And being in academics are the best years of our lives, so we should make the most of it, I think. Yeah.
Yes,
And I have tried to remain relevant, and I have tried to remain a student all life because I keep doing this kind of projects. So there are different types of practices, and because I'm involved with academics since years and meet different kind of students and different kind of projects. So in the process, I keep myself rejuvenated with new ideas all the time. It's different. What may work for me may not work for someone else. It's different things, for different people. So it's difficult to generalize. Okay.
yes. I think we can conclude the session
Yeah.
now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this evening. With
Sure.
this, we come to an end to the first lecture of Atelier 2021, The Visions of the Future. We hope it helped to start brainwaves of extracting characters and concepts from surroundings, and we look forward to connect and interact soon. Thank you everyone for joining today.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, sir.
sir.
Bye. Bye.